Hello, my name is Jim Toot, and I'm an Associate Professor of Political Science at Central Virginia Community College. In this video, we'll discuss social insurance programs. The Social Security Act established a system of social insurance in which taxes on payrolls were used to provide benefits to the elderly. Social Security was soon expanded to cover benefits for survivors, including widows, dependent children, and orphans. In 1956, disabled Americans were added to the list of beneficiaries, thus formally creating the Old Age, Survivors, and Disability Insurance, or OASDI system. Social Security now provides benefits to over 48 million Americans. It is the main source of economic survival for two-thirds of the elderly and the only source of income for over 30% of the aged. Traditionally, more money has been paid out into the Social Security Trust Fund than drawn out, leading to a revenue surplus. But Americans are living longer than ever. Longer lives mean larger payouts from the fund, and there is no limit on the number of years people receive benefits. Also, recent generations entering the workforce are generally smaller in size than their predecessors. By 2040, there will not be enough money in the fund to finance recipients at the current level. Special commissions have issued reports about these problems. Proposals to fix Social Security have been developed by these commissions, think tanks, other interest groups, and a few politicians. In 1983, the age of eligibility for full retirement benefits was increased from 65 to 66, but the change wasn't effective until 2009. The age increases to 67 in 2027. Additional revenue could be generated by increasing the percentage of the payroll tax, or the amount to which it is applied to employees' wages and employers' contributions. However, tax increases are never popular among elected officials. President George W. Bush went public with a campaign to inspire public and congressional support for his proposals to save Social Security. Launching his campaign in his State of the Union address, he embarked on a high-profile 60 cities in 60 days tour. His theme, Social Security, was in perilous condition. He proposed to save it through personal or private savings accounts. People would be allowed to invest a third of their Social Security withholdings into a variety of investment options, such as the stock market. The argument for privatization is that the stock market greatly outperforms Social Security's trust funds over the long term. The Cato Institute, a conservative think tank, has been a major proponent of privatization. Traditionally, education policy has been the domain of state and local governments. Schools are funded mainly by local property taxes. Consequently, schools' resources and thus the quality of their education depend on their location, with vast differences between and often within school districts. No Child Left Behind. Fulfilling his campaign pledge, repeated in his inauguration address to close the gap in achievement between poor and minority children and children attending primarily white schools in the suburbs and to improve school performance, President George W. Bush obtained passage of significant amendments to the ESEA in the No Child Left Behind Act of 2002. He signed legislation into law in an elaborate ceremony accompanied by his bipartisan congressional allies. The federal government's limited involvement began to change in the 1960s as part of President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty. The 1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or the ESEA, allotted funds for developing remedial programs, hiring teachers and aides, and purchasing supplies and equipment. The Head Start program, also established in 1965, provided low-income children with preschool education. The Department of Education was created in 1979. The law called for states to implement accountability systems covering all public schools and students, and to test all students in grades 3 through 8 in reading and math. Schools failing to make adequate yearly progress towards goals are subject to corrective action and restructuring. To increase parental choice for children attending and underperforming schools, schools are required to let low-income parents use allotted federal funding to pay for tuition at a school in the district that has attained acceptable standards. President Obama, Secretary of Education, promised to rectify the defects of No Child Left Behind. He proposed to raise academic standards, end the misleading identification of thousands of schools as failing, turn around schools that were truly failing, recruit and retain effective teachers, track students' and teachers' performance, and tie teacher evaluations to students' test scores. He wanted to increase the number of charter schools to compete with public schools. He encouraged the development of national standards in English and math to be adopted by the states, specifying the skills students should have at each grade level. Although the timetable for implementing the standards is uncertain, states will have to rethink teacher training, textbooks, and testing. He also created the Race to the Top competition, allocating $4.3 billion in education aid to states that comply with the administration's educational goals. But this is a modest sum, won by only a few states compared with the approximately $650 billion spent on K-12 education annually. Program by program, the federal government has contributed to the cost of medical care for some of the people who have difficulty paying their medical bills or have no health insurance. The media encouraged the creation of such government policies by consistently reporting about the large number of uninsured Americans who, it was assumed, were without adequate doctor, prescription drug, and hospital care. In the next section, we'll discuss major domestic policies, healthcare programs.